Welcome to another episode, everyone. Nolan Wells was murdered. His autopsy results are in. We have breaking news. Benjamin Crux has the independent autopsy results. The family hired civil rights attorney Benjamin Crux here to help find out what happened to their child, to Nolan Wells. He hired an independent, which Colin Kaepernick paid for. Shout out to Colin Kaepernick. Paid for the autopsy, the independent autopsy of Nolan Wells. Come to find out, his skull was fractured. Also, they removed his organs during the autopsy. Your discretion is advised. This is crazy work. Now, we've been covering the Nolan Wells situation, for those who may not know, on my other channel, The Unwoke Culture. That's the name of the channel. The link is in the description. We've been covering Nolan Wells every day. This is not about me. This is about Nolan Wells. Just want to let you know I'm just not over here talking about gang stuff every day, all day, and penitentiary stuff and this and that. I mean, I am. But I have another channel where I'm covering this stuff. Talking about everything involving the community. And have been trying to get down to the bottom of what happened to Nolan Wells. I know what happened to him. He was murdered by his so-called friends, by these YT friends of his. They took him out there and beat him to death. Check out the autopsy. Now, Benjamin Crux was going on and on and on and on and on and on for a long time, for about an hour or so, before he finally get into the autopsy. I'm getting straight to that. Let's see what happened to Nolan Wells, according to the independent autopsy.
So, Dr. Roger Mitchell, board-certified forensic pathologist, performed a preliminary report on the death of Nolan Xavier Wells. He conducted and presented this report on July 19th, 2026. Preliminary report, second autopsy, death of Nolan Xavier Wells. Cause of death, undetermined, pending investigation. And we'll explain that as we go through the report this morning. The manner of death, undetermined, pending investigation. Statement of examination. This forensic pathologist was retained to perform a second autopsy examination on the body of Nolan Xavier Wells. Name of decedent, Nolan Xavier Wells. Age, 18 years old. Race, black. Gender, male. Date of death, unknown. Second autopsy date was performed on July 10th, 2026.
Okay, now that's important. Date of death unknown is important because, of course, they're saying that he passed July 4th, or that they left him out there on Horns Island on July 4th. They don't know. According to the autopsy, the second autopsy, which again was conducted on July 10th, they don't know when he died.
Preliminary findings, and this is significant. Focal area of red discoloration in the soft tissue of the back of the head, the occipital region. He said the etiology is unknown at this time.
In other words, they cracked his skull. That's what it sounds like. His skull was cracked. Now, someone can say when he fell over and drowned in the water, he hit his head on a rock or something. But it looks like his skull was fractured. The back of his head.
Said the body was received after the initial autopsy. He said the body had marked decompensation. He said corona incision of the scalp, brain removal, Y-shaped incision of the anterior torso, and he talked about the organs being removed, as is common, accompanied in the body cavity. And that when you have an autopsy, the organs are removed from the body and they are dissected and examined. and then they're put back in a bag within inside the body. So when they're buried, their remains will all be with them. But in this occasion, if there's going to be a second autopsy, then the organs are put in the body cavity so the second pathologist could be able to examine the organs as well. Very significant for Dr. Mitchell was that the anterior inner neck structures were absent, not received with the body. And we'll explain that in just a minute.
Please do.
And then it talks about
the inner neck structures were not received with the body. The the structures of the neck, like some could, they were not. Why was that not received with the body?
The additional procedures performed during the second autopsy, and we'll go into the paragraphs on that there because he explains it better in his narrative. So where's the first page of the discussion? Not the diagram yet. You can keep the diagram over there. Move this back, Lisa. So he talks in the preliminary discussion opinion. This forensic pathologist identified several limitations during the second autopsy that create barriers to establishing a definitive cause and manner of death for Nolan Xavier Wells. And that's important. He talks about.
Wow. So the second autopsy is saying that now, while Benjamin Crump is here saying how ordinary and common it is for them to remove organs, they also removed his brain, as we heard, and his neck structures were missing. The second autopsy individual is saying that because of the barriers that the first autopsy presented for me, I couldn't come to a conclusion. In other words, they damaged the body. This is what I'm saying. This is my opinion. This is my interpretation of what he is saying. The second independent autopsy is saying that because of the barriers that they presented, that the first autopsy, when I got the body, the shape that the body was in, and what was left of him, minus the organs and the brain and the neck structure, I couldn't determine a manner of death. It was nothing left for me to determine a manner of death. They covered it up. They hid it. In other words, the first autopsy, we already seen. Well, they're on my other channel on the Unwoke Culture. We discussed it. 2 black women said that Nolan Wells' body had been beaten, that his face was beaten, that when his corpse was being transferred or transported, that they had him face down, on the gurney, on the stretcher. They had him face down, which is disrespectful. You're supposed to, of course, have someone facing up. They had him face down because he was so beaten. Whew. Yeah, nah, man. No. They're not getting away with this one, buddy. They're not. They're not going to get away with this. We're not going to let them get away with this. Are we, black men? No way. I say no. That's what he just said, that they made it so hard with the first autopsy and the transportation of the body. That's me talking now. I'm putting that in because I covered that. That's what they said, that his body was disrespected, defiled, denigrated, desecrated, beaten, and they had him face down in the transportation of the body. And then the autopsy, they did a number on him to where they already knew that there was going to be a second autopsy. The family had announced this long ago, that there was going to be an independent autopsy. So they already knew. And common sense dictates to them that there's going to be another autopsy, that the family is going to want one. It was receiving so much publicity to the situation, this case, his death. They knew it was going to be further investigation. And they made it to where no one else can do a proper investigation of the body because of the way that they treated the body when they did their first autopsy. This is what he just said. This is what the second individual autopsy just said, that the barriers presented by the first autopsy made it to where I couldn't even come up with a manner of death. That's because he was murdered. We already see that they said the back of his skull was fractured. His inner neck structures are missing. His brain is missing because that was probably bashed in. Organs gone. Get out of here. Come in my ass.
The fact that we didn't get to see the body when it was first recovered, like the medical examiner working for Mississippi would have seen it. He talked about the second autopsy performed on Nolan Wells revealed marked decompensation or changes. Marked decompensation can obscure the presence and absence of bruising on the skin surface, especially during a second autopsy examination. What he's saying, because the body was so decomposed that you couldn't tell if there was bruises or abrasions on the body when he received it on the 10th of July. For these reasons, additional dissection procedures not performed during the first autopsy examination were performed to rule out potential blunt force injuries responsible for the death. These procedures included facial dissection, posterior head and neck dissection, dissection of the ribs, the pelvic, dissection of the subcutaneous and deep soft tissue, dissection of the back, the buttocks, the arms, and legs. He did all of this to rule out things. He ruled out there were no fractures or deep tissue injuries identified. This was very important because he wanted to be very thorough and very transparent, because transparency is the key to getting to the answers of why Nolan Wells is not with us. So he did that there and was very straightforward, very open, very open. He says, however, dissection of the back of the head during the layered posterior neck dissection revealed a 12 by 8 inch focal area of red discoloration in the deep soft tissues overlaying the occipital bone. And he talked about how he found red discoloration when he cut open into the back of his head towards the occipital bone, and he saw the red discoloration, and we actually saw the pictures of it. It's significant. You can't help but notice, why is this dark red here in the back of his head? And so he was important to note that in his report. He said that etiology of this finding is unclear. There are no lacerations of the overlaying skin, nor fractures of the underlying skull. These findings are inconclusive for perimortem injury due to both the extensive decomposition and the absence of associated injuries. This finding, however, is significant enough to be highlighted in this preliminary report for further investigation. It is important to reiterate that the finding could not have been observed in the first autopsy because the posterior head and neck dissection were not performed. He said another limitation, move this back here. Another limitation faced by this forensic pathologist was the absence of the anterior internal neck structures. The trachea and the laryngeal cartilage, the thyroid horn, and the hyoid bone were not received with the body. So he's saying that the throat was not received with the body when he got Nolan Wells' body in Washington, D.C. to perform the second.
Well, why is that? Why would they not send all of the body parts? Why would they withhold the throat? Did they choke him out? Did they hit him in the throat? Did they stab him in the throat? Who knows? And we see that, again, the second autopsy said that he had lacerations in the back of his head, the back of his skull. It was beaten. That's what happened. He didn't fall and hit his head on a boat. He was beaten. And again, he made it clear that it was hard for him to make certain conclusions because of the condition of the body from the first autopsy. Yeah, this is nasty work. It's clear to me what happened. Anyone else still have any questions? Yes, his autopsy is essentially inconclusive, but he has made it clear to make note that he had lacerations in the back of his head and that his throat is missing. They didn't remove his brain and everything else. Now his throat is missing. Wow.
An autopsy. And so let's discuss that with what he said about that. He said, it is assumed that the initial pathologist retained these structures for additional evaluation. He said the retention of the anterior neck structures during an initial autopsy is a common forensic pathology practice. He was chief medical examiner for 7 years in Washington, D.C., and he said that if they had concern about throat or any fracture or compression of the throat, they too will hold them back. He doesn't know why they held the throat back, but he said the throat was not with the body of Nolan Wells when he received it in Washington, D.C. to perform the second autopsy. He said, nevertheless, a posterior neck dissection performed without review of the anterior neck structures is incomplete. Therefore, this pathologist cannot rule out injury to the neck as a contributor or a cause of death. He said he would need to have the medical examiner in Mississippi allow him to review the throat. That's why he said his autopsy is undetermined pending investigation. Remember, it's about transparency.
Okay, so there it is. Benjamin Crump said early on that he would explain why the second autopsy said that it was undetermined pending investigation. Like what further investigation do you need? Why is your findings undetermined pending an investigation? So again, he has not said that he was murdered, but he has not ruled out murder either. It's inconclusive. It's undetermined. I don't have all of his body to determine what happened to this kid. This young man. I don't have all of his body parts to dissect to determine the cause of death. They're withholding parts of his body. They didn't send the throat. That's not a mistake. They didn't send the throat. So he's saying it's undetermined, the findings of the autopsy. He made it clear some of this stuff is very suspicious. My words, not his, but this is the indication. When he highlights the bruising and fracture or whatever on the back of his head, the back of his skull, and the red area back there and such, and his other findings, and he's simply saying now that I can't determine the cause of death until I see everything that I need to see. So he's telling them I need to see the throat. So it's undetermined pending my investigation of the throat, my dissection of the throat, and whatever other body parts may be missing. Once I can view all of that, then I can make my findings as to what happened. But for some reason, someone doesn't want him to have these particular body parts. Why? Well, we know why. They murdered him.
Because the initial autopsy rightfully removed and dissected each organ, there are additional limitations inherent in the second autopsy of Nolan Wells. The most significant of the limitations was the inability to directly observe the airway and the lungs for water and directly observe the stomach for gastric contents. He said it is very significant as to what the initial forensic scientists who got to review the body when it was recovered. We have heard from our call center people saying the body wasn't waterlogged. Well, we need to know those things. But unfortunately, because the body was decomposed and the organs have already been dissected, those are things we can only get from the initial autopsy. So therefore, again, the manner and cause of death is undetermined until further investigation. We are hopeful that the Mississippi Medical Examiner would give Dr. Mitchell an opportunity to see their photographs and their observations to the condition of Nolan Wells' body closer in time to July 4th. That is very important, and we have to continue to demand transparency, President Johnson.
Yeah, good luck with that. So, in other words, by the time he conducted the second autopsy, the body had been decomposed, as he alluded to earlier, so he couldn't determine bruising and this and that on the body. The first autopsy could have, but they are in cahoots. And so they're not going to say anything. This is an independent autopsy. He says that he could not determine if there were water in the lungs, things like that, since they're claiming that he drowned by the time that he received the body, which was, again, apparently July 10th, and that it had already decomposed and, he could not make certain findings. If he had done the first autopsy, then he could. But since he didn't get it to the body until days later, and basically a week later, then it was too late for him to make certain determinations. And of course, because certain body parts are missing as well. So now he's saying, well, the people that did see the body at that time, the first people that conducted the first autopsy, perhaps hopefully they'll be transparent and let us know what happened. What did you see? Did his lungs have water in it? Was his face beaten, etc.? Did he have bruising? They're going to say that. They're going to admit that. One of these kids' mothers is a judge, and they all close ranks all of the time together. This is a whole machine. They work together. They work in cahoots together. They come together to support their people, believe that, and defend their people, even in the most treacherous ways. So no, good luck with Mississippi. The Mississippi findings being honest with you about what their findings were when the body first came in. Yeah, no, good luck.
In addition, the original toxicology results have not been received at the time of this report. And we continue to wait for the toxicology to come back because, again, that will be part of the investigation into Nolan Wells' autopsy by Dr. Mitchell. It is significant to note that it's many things that go into toxicology that only Dr. Mitchell would be able to opine upon, and medical experts can opine upon. And he feels the proper place to do that is before a grand jury in a courtroom. And so we would hope that the district attorney would present Dr. Mitchell before the grand jury as well. We want all relevant information to be heard by the grand jury. Lastly, in cases where a death has occurred in or around a body of water, can you move this back? This is important. Okay, right now. Lastly, in cases where a death has occurred in or around a body of water with suspicion of drowning, it is important to confirm how that person entered the water. This is the crux of the matter. This information is especially important for those deaths of persons who can swim. As in the case with Nolan Wells, at the time of this report, this forensic pathologist does not know the condition of Nolan Wells. He did not know whether he was conscious or unconscious when he entered the water. He said that would be significant. He said he did not know whether he was forced into the water or unforced into the water. He said that would be significant. So he said the condition of Nolan Wells before he entered the water would be the crux of the matter. It would be of utmost importance to being able to determine a cause and manner of death. He said, definitive circumstances of death are required to determine the manner of death. For these reasons, this pathologist cannot rule out, and let me really call your attention to this. For these reasons, this pathologist cannot rule out if any intervening non-accidental factors contributed to or caused the death of Nolan Wells. Understand, he's saying based on the examination of the body, he cannot rule out foul play. That is significant. With the following questions still outstanding, number one, what were the circumstances that led to Nolan Xavier Wells entering the water? Number two, what was the body position when it was found? We know that a member of the United Cajun Navy said that he was face down and he was fully clothed. Number three, was there water in the airway? Remember, he talked about the lungs and the airways, were they filled with water? Number four, is there any evidence of injuries to the anterior neck structure? We got the autopsy without his neck. We got the body without his neck at the time of the second autopsy. Number five, is there any evidence of any intracranial hemorrhaging? He said that is going to be very significant. Things that he could not observe at autopsy that the initial medical examiner would have been able to observe.
Right. He did observe it. He observed everything, the initial individual who performed the autopsy. But is this individual going to say all of this? Is he going to say that he had intracranial damage? No, he's not. If he were, he would have already said it. So he's going to continue to withhold the information as to whether or not he had water in his lungs. Okay, one of the individuals that found the body said that he was face down and fully clothed. Why would he have on clothes if he was just going for a freaking swim or something like they want us to believe? He just, essentially found himself in the water, basically voluntarily, with all of his clothes on, and someone who knows how to swim. Clearly, this is a cover-up. What we are witnessing in real time is a cover-up from top to bottom. They are protecting the individuals who did this. Had it been three black men and the white guy did not come home, they would all be in jail. We'll ask questions later. Believe that. Understand this. This is a cover-up. The mother is a judge. This is a cover-up from top to bottom. This individual who conducted the autopsy, the first one, is not about to divulge the information. Again, if he were going to do that, he would have already done it. We are at July 22nd now. He knows exactly what happened because he's the first individual that had access to the body as far as an autopsy is concerned, and relatively quickly. So he knows whether or not there were water in the lungs. He knows whether or not there was brain hemorrhaging, fractures, etc. He knows whether or not there was bruising on the body. The second autopsy knows none of this because of the condition of the body when he got it, not to mention they had missing body parts. The first one does. So they're calling and beseeching the first individual autopsy to be transparent about his findings. Good luck. If he were going to do that, he would have already did it. They've already got to him.
Number six was the composition of what was the composition of the stomach contents. He talks about that being important because when was he found? How long had he been in the water? How long had it been since his last meal? All those things become relevant factors when you're trying to do a thorough and impartial autopsy. And number seven, what are the toxicology report findings? He said the best classification again for the cause and manner of death for Nolan Xavier Wells is undetermined pending investigation. This forensic pathologist reserves the right to review and incorporate additional forensic pathology information into his opinion as it becomes available. He says, the above opinions are expressed to a reasonable degree of medical certainty. Dr. Roger A. Mitchell, July 19, 2026. And we know that, as I said, this is only another part of the puzzle. And even though it tells us significant information, we still have more questions than we have answers at this time. And we will continue to press forward and persist, Christine and Elmore, with getting the answers to these questions. Because as you, yes.
Not really. We have the answers. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. We have all of the answers. His skull, the back of his skull was fractured. When the second autopsy got the body, it was too decomposed for him to come to any conclusions about bruising on the body. His throat, his whole neck is missing from the autopsy, the second autopsy. So it's undetermined. As far he can't determine because they have not been forthright with even his body parts. They are with a clear cover-up. Why would they withhold his whole entire neck? And why would they not say what their findings were from the very beginning, the individuals who performed the first autopsy, when they had access to all of this information because they performed the autopsy a day or so after his death. So they were able to determine what he had eaten and the last time he had eaten. And that is important. They can determine what was in his stomach and what was not, what was in his lungs and what was not, what his throat looked like, his neck, as to the reason why they're not even sending it out for the second autopsy, because there's something amiss there. The condition of his brain. They know all of this, whereas the second autopsy cannot. So he said, I'm withholding the right to withhold my opinion upon further investigation. Give me all the damn body parts. Tell me what you all saw when you first performed the autopsy. Then I'll make my determination. But he issued stern precautions. What he believes happened here, he still has to be professional and not just say, but as he said, he cannot rule out any foul play. So he's just going to be careful with his wording, but you can read between the lines. He believes clearly that there was some sort of foul play. Why are they withholding body parts? I can't determine the cause of death. Something went on with the back of his head. His skull had been caved in. How did he get in the water? What was the condition of the body when he got into the water? He knows none of this because by the time he got the body for the second autopsy, none of this stuff can be determined. That's not an accident. That's America.
We will persist, because as Christine and Elmore and Attorney Parker and I talked this morning, we know that there are so many conflicting stories. The fact that she said him being found face down, the fact that we have other videos where people who have called said that is Nolan, who is in some kind of dispute with others. We're looking at all of these things. The fact that the GPS tracking of the boat is being questioned by many. We're trying to dot every I and cross every T because we understand that when our children's lives are at stake. It matters, not just what happened, but what we do in the aftermath of them being taken away from us. And just like the NAACP stood up when another tragedy in Mississippi taking the life of young Emmett Till, we will stand up for Nolan Wells. Just like the NAACP and civil rights leaders stood up when another Mississippi son was taken in Medgar Evers. We will stand up for Nolan Wells.
Yeah, that's a story for another day. But the NAACP and who they stood up for and what they actually stood for and continue to stand for. Emmett Till's death was never avenged. So I'm not sure exactly how they stood. They got to the bottom of some things and got some answers, but the woman who lied on Emmett Till lived out her life to its entirety. Caroline O'Brien, piece of trash bunny. She lived out her life. She didn't suffer any consequences. No one else involved with that situation. There you have it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Nolan Wells, autopsy, independent autopsy, cause of death, murdered. Me speaking. Cause of death, as far as the second autopsy is concerned, undetermined. Inconclusive upon investigation. Upon further investigation. In other words, these are not his final findings. He hasn't made any findings yet because they're withholding body parts. They're withholding body parts, whole heads and shit. Brains. Organs. Necks. They were able to determine the condition of the body rather quickly. The first autopsy, second autopsy, not so much. Body's decomposed by the time it gets there. So it's undetermined. The cause of Nolan Wells' death officially, as we just heard, undetermined upon further investigation. It's not the final findings. Undetermined upon investigation. He has the second autopsy said that he has the right. He's going to withhold the right to the second examiner. He's going to withhold the right to change his mind or change his opinion. Well, he hasn't really given an opinion yet. Well, other than essentially, again, if you read in between the lines anyway, there's at least the potential for foul play. Hell, he said as much that he can't rule out that there was foul play. He's not going to rule it out until they're honest with him and forthright about the condition of the body when they received it. Let them see the pictures, etc. Sit down and discuss this with him and give him all of the body parts for him to examine. And until that happens, he is not ruling out any foul play. If anything, he is indicating that there has been foul play. He doesn't know what happened, or what Nolan Wells' condition was before he got into the water. Couldn't even determine what he had to eat the last time he had eaten anything, because he got the body a week later. But the individuals who do have the answers to all of those questions, because they got the body immediately, well, they've gone silent. They've gone rogue. You think they're about to say what really happened? You think they're about to say what really happened? We have to stay on top of it, try to force these individuals, force their hand, put this pressure on them, public pressure on them to divulge their true findings about the condition of Nolan Wells' body when they first received it. They're the gatekeepers at this point. They're the only ones that really know. Because as we can see, the second autopsy could not determine because of the condition of the body by the time that he received it. This is foul. This is nasty work. This is sick. This is a cover-up. And it broke the man's neck. That's what it happened. Yeah, it's going to come out, man. It's going to come out. that this is no accident that they didn't send the neck to be examined. The whole freaking throat. This is no accident, people. Forget what you're talking about. This is no accident. That the condition of the body was such that the second examiner could not determine a cause of death. This is not an accident. Use your head. What we're witnessing is a cover-up, and we're going to have to expose it here on the Inside Story with me, Damian Porter, and on the Unwoke Culture. Go check it out. We on top of it over there, but I had to bring this over here, this autopsy, to keep you all abreast of what's going on. There you go, man. I can go on and on about this. This is because this is crazy. He could not even determine the cause of death because of the condition of the body and because they have been withholding evidence in the form of a whole neck. Wow. Lacerations, fractures, red meat, back of his head, back of his skull, caved in. Couldn't determine whether his brain had been damaged. He said intracranial because I believe that they withheld the brain as well. But if nothing else, the condition of it, by the time that he received it, he couldn't make any determinations. He needs their help to make his own determinations with being forthcoming with what they know and with the rest of the evidence that they have in the form of his body. So the question is, are they going to do that? Are they going to be honest? And are they going to turn over the rest of his body parts? For some reason, they withheld it. Use your imagination. This depends on what you think and how you think, I suppose. My opinion is that he was murdered and that's why they withheld it. You may think otherwise, some people. But eventually it will come out, perhaps one way or another, only really by pressure. Them individuals getting immense pressure put on them. Other than that, the fix is in, the cover up is real, it's in real time. The same way that Trump is covering up what he did to those children, and the DOJ is covering it up, and the FBI is covering it up. This stuff runs deep. Extremely. Don't get it twisted. They'll kill you and get away with it. Cover it up. Straight like that. This is nasty. Whew. Wow. Let me know what you think in the comments, man. Let me stop. Stay safe, stay free. Rest in peace to Nolan Wells. We on top of it. We gonna stay on it. We gonna put pressure on these individuals, man. We gonna find out what happened to them. That's what we gonna find out what happened to them. We are gonna find out what happened to our brother. Why is his neck missing from the autopsy? The second autopsy, his whole freaking neck. Why is the back of his head bashed in? Why was he found face down with all of his clothes on if he just went for a freaking swim? Went for a swim in his tennis shoes. Huh? Shirt on, everything else. No. Why, during the transportation of his corpse, was he face down on a gurney, on a stretcher? And witnesses say that his face had been beaten and the back of his head was beaten and his body was damaged and disrespected during the transportation. Y'all not getting away with this. Sick of y'all getting away with all this stuff. We're firing back. Stay safe and stay free, people.